It would be no exaggeration to say that I've lost pretty much all faith in Hollywood's ability to remake, reboot, or even continue long-running franchises without destroying everything that made them popular in the first place. The list of once popular movies and TV shows that have been absolutely butchered by ham-fisted attempts to reimagine them for modern audiences is longer than my list of DUI convictions. And that's pretty fucking long, believe me. And one of the worst victims of this plague on modern entertainment is without a doubt Ghostbusters. The first film was a classic horror comedy where every element somehow came together to create a near perfect movie experience. A fairly workmanlike sequel came out in 1989, playing on most of the same beats as the original without adding much of its own. Although fuck me, I've never understood the hate it's gotten over the years. Might have to get a video out about that one. Then in 2016, Sony decided it would be a good idea to reboot the series in the present day, replacing the dry sarcastic humour of the original with goofy, obvious jokes and painfully unfunny slapstick, starring a bunch of has-beens and nobodies, and directed by a man with no idea what the fuck he was doing. And well, I think we know how that one turned out. But holy shit, it actually seems like Sony may have learned from their mistakes when they announced that another Ghostbusters movie was in production. This time it was going to be a direct sequel to the second movie, directed by the son of the man who made the first two films, featuring appearances from all the original cast in their original roles, and best of all, completely ignoring the existence of the disastrous reboots. So far, so good. But as we all know, good intentions can only get you so far. The real question hanging over Ghostbusters Afterlife was a simple one. Will it be any fucking good? And based on the most recent trailer, the answer seems to be yes. A cautious yes perhaps, but yes all the same. There's definitely a few caveats to it, and there's still a whole bunch of stuff that could go wrong with this movie, but overall I came away from the trailer thinking, holy shit, maybe they won't completely fuck this one up.
You serious?
I know, I'm a hopeless optimist. Basically, the gist of this film is that Egon's daughter Callie is divorced and bankrupt, and after getting evicted from her apartment, she moves out to rural Oklahoma with her two kids, where her late father Egon left her with a dilapidated house in his will. As the kids poke around the place, they begin to discover bits and pieces of Egon's former life, including a certain converted hearse that most of us should probably recognise. And it's not a moment too soon as it happens, because wouldn't you know it, the town starts experiencing strange ghostly phenomenon. Unexplained earthquakes, poltergeists, weird lights in the sky.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria!
Speaking of dogs, that looks an awful lot like the demon hounds from the first movie. And the fact that the old mine shaft that features prominently in the trailer once belonged to Ivo Shandor should tell you a lot about who the antagonist of this film might be. And of course, finally, we get a little glimpse of the original Ghostbusters.
We're closed.
Overall, I think this is a pretty good trailer that gives just enough to whet your appetite without spoiling any of the big payoffs. It strikes the right balance between intrigue over what Egon might have been looking for out there, tension as the ghosts and demons start to show up, character moments and conflicts, fast-paced action that's clearly more geared toward modern sensibilities, and reverence for the franchise's history. And I guess that's one of my biggest takeaways here. The trailer's definitely leaning hard on nostalgia, but to be honest, I'm quite okay with that, because it actually comes across as a respectful and dignified callback to the franchise's history, instead of a cynical and desperate marketing ploy to try to drum up some interest in a soulish cash grab sequel. Holy shit, imagine that! A modern movie that actually shows respect and reverence for the work of previous generations, instead of trying to tear them down and belittle them to make their own shitty creations look better. Given the age of the original cast and the amount of time that's passed since the last movie, a film like this was always going to be a passing the torch kind of story, with a new generation of Ghostbusters taking up the proton packs. The decision to skip a generation and use kids rather than young adults was an interesting gamble, and whether or not it pays off will depend on whether the actors can sell it without coming across as irritating or forced. There's a real Stranger Things vibe to their interactions and group dynamics, not to mention the fucking actor playing one of them, which probably seemed like an awesome idea a couple of years ago when the show was still a cool and unique novelty. But the thing about cool and unique novelties is that they don't tend to stay that way for long, and the concept of a group of misfit kids banded together to fight a supernatural threat just feels a bit, well, played out now. Hopefully I'm wrong about this one and they can make it work though. I'm also slightly wary about the implied reuse of Gozer as the antagonist. I mean, the demon dogs are back, so it strongly implies that Gozer will be making a return as well. I know it's an entity that can take on lots of forms, so I guess there's plenty you can do with that, but it does run the risk of rehashing the same basic story from the first movie, and we've seen what happens there. The other big question mark over this film for me is the one and only Bill Murray, who's conspicuously absent from the trailer. I mean, he's in the cast list, so I assume he's actually on screen in some capacity, but you never fucking know with that dude. The guy's basically the reason we didn't get a third Ghostbusters film for more than 30 years. His decades-long refusal to make an actual decision is one of the big reasons that Sony finally said, fuck it, we'll do a remake instead. And honestly, I think it's about time people stop making excuses for the guy. Yeah, he was a great comic actor and a big part of the original success, but he's also an unprofessional dick, and his shitty attitude on set has derailed just about every movie he's ever worked on. Anyway, moving on. I get the impression that family is going to form an important foundation for this film's story. And by family, I don't mean a bunch of unrelated strangers that can go from killing each other one day to chilling out with some beers and a barbecue the next. I mean actual blood relatives with real, meaningful connections to each other. The trailer seems to hint at the importance of family legacy and finding out hidden secrets about a person you thought you knew your whole life. And I think this is a pretty decent way of dealing with the real-life death of Harold Ramis, allowing his character to play an important part in the story, even if he can no longer be there in the flesh. It also explores an aspect of the original Ghostbusters' personal lives that the previous movies never really went into. We never got much of an insight into Ray or Egon or Peter's lives outside of the business, so if it's handled effectively, then I think it could be really good for this movie. So overall, my attitude is one of cautious optimism, I guess. It feels like all the right pieces are in place to make this film a worthy addition to the Ghostbusters franchise, and we just have to hope they make the right moves with them. Yeah, I've still got a few reservations, mostly because I've been burned so many times by modern bastardizations of old franchises, but I think, for once, good people with good intentions are on the case here. Fingers crossed they can back it up with a good fucking movie. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.